Welcome back to Meet the Doctors. You know, it's shocking, but prescription drug overdoses kill more Americans than heroin, cocaine, and other illicit drugs combined. In fact, we use more painkillers than any other nation on the planet. And families are being ripped apart by it, as Governor Rick Scott of Florida knows firsthand.
Well, I have a brother that's been on drugs all his life. I don't talk to him about it, so I don't know. But I know he's been in. He's ended up stopped by law enforcement a lot. He's been in a bunch. I've put him in a variety of psychiatric programs, and to this day, it hasn't worked. Look at how many people are dying in this state. Over 7 people a day are dying of drug overdoses. And I've had drug abuse in my family, and it's just devastating.
It is devastating, not just for the governor, but for millions of families all over the country. To give us a better understanding of this epidemic is Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate once again. Nick, it is heartbreaking to see how many millions of families across this nation are impacted by drug abuse.
There's no question about it. It is a huge public health problem, and you know we now experience in this country about 46 people every day die from a prescription drug overdose, primarily to painkillers, which are very easy to get. All anybody needs to do to get a painkiller, or heavy narcotic, is to walk into a doctor's office and say, "I'm in pain. Give me a painkiller." There isn't a test like a blood test for high blood pressure or cholesterol, and doctors in many cases are all too eager to prescribe those meds.
I actually have heard the term doctor shopping, and I think I understand what it is, but maybe you could explain it for us.
You go to doctor shopping refers to the practice of an addict, say, going to one doctor and getting one prescription and then going to another doctor and getting another prescription. And so this is how they can build the supply of meds that they have. And that's one of the reasons that people OD, is they're getting drugs from multiple doctors. Now, in places like Florida and other states, they have created databases that allow doctors to check a patient's record and see if they've received other prescription drugs in the past. If they have, it strengthens the doctor's hand in saying, well, I'm not going to give a prescription to this person who just got one yesterday or the day before from another doctor. And that's one reason why in the state of Florida there's been a drop of about 23% in the number of drug overdoses since they put in place this database that allows doctors to check, which really cracks down on this doctor shopping practice.
Doctor shopping is one term, pill mills is another. Define that for us.
Pill mills are places that routinely just bring patients in and churn out the supply of meds. There are a lot of places that have reputations where even addicts from other states know they can come and they're just churning them out. You see them lining up outside the doors before they even open, and they really become kind of mills for the dispensing of these meds. It's one reason why in this country we do use more painkillers than any other country on the planet. Something like 110 tons of painkillers are prescribed in the U.S. every year. That's enough for every man, woman, and child to have at least one bottle of meds on their medicine chest, and a lot of people just believe that's too much.
I'm one of them. I can't believe it. That when you put those numbers out there, it just seems unbelievable that Americans are that into prescription drugs. Nick, I want to thank you very much for being with us and giving us the information that you usually do. It always enlightens us. We're going to talk to you later in the show, I understand, as well. So we'll talk to you in a moment, but right now we want to bring in our Newsmax contributor and wellness expert, Dr. Erica Schwartz. Nice to have you back with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So you heard Nick say that this is an epidemic in this country. You're a physician. Why are doctors so willing to write those prescriptions?
I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that. Yeah, doctors, unfortunately, are trained to write prescriptions. And I remember as a young doctor that one of the senior doctors told me, you know, when you go into private practice and you have a patient coming in, all they want is for you to write a prescription. If you're not going to write the prescription, they're not going to come back to you. So while I'm perfectly willing to blame the doctors and blame the pharmaceutical industry for being so overly, abundant and creating such a huge demand by advertising directly to the public, and the doctors not knowing what else to do because they're trained by the pharmaceutical industry, I think we should also look at ourselves, because we as patients ask for the prescription.
Is there a particular kind of painkiller in particular that people ask for more frequently?
Yeah, of course. There's, the OxyContins, the opioids, they're called, Vicodin. Everybody knows about it. And, and it starts from high school. And it's like, as Nick told us before, it's worse than the combined cocaine and heroin problem. And so the thing is that we're allowing our children, as parents, we're not supervising them enough. And then once people get hooked on it, the opportunity is there. There are the pill mills, there are the drug, the painkiller, problem. Oh, I have a pain in the back. Just to get you out of the office,
So what
here's
do
the
you
prescription.
do? I'm your patient. I come in, I tell you I'm having a terrible knee pain or my shoulder is hurting. What would you do to test to make sure that I truly am in pain? Don't you have to have faith and trust in your patient?
I think you should, and I think the most important thing is to coach your patients first and then to look for the results. So that's not the way we're taught in medical school. What I think is you examine the patient, you talk to the patient, you develop a relationship with the patient. And then I think as far as prescription, there's a lot of room before you get to writing a prescription for something that deadly.
Are you suspicious if I come in and I ask for a particular drug, I say I want OxyContin?
Content? Yeah, you better believe it. I've never written a prescription for OxyContin ever in my life, and I wouldn't. This is the thing. When somebody comes in and they complain about a pain, you can examine the patient. You can get this history of the patient, and you can tell a patient if they're doctor shopping. And you know what? In this environment of insurance, getting paid nothing, the doctor looking to make a buck, literally, writing a prescription may be their only way of making money that day. So you're looking at a really disastrous combination and confluence.
We have to take responsibility as patients too.
Unequivocally.
To make sure that we don't become over dependent on it. I know when I had my knee surgery, I wanted to make sure that I didn't take too much because I didn't want to get addicted to it. So I'm sure you see that all the time.
All the time.
All right. As we baby boomers age, many of us are taking a variety of life-improving medications. But asking the doctor to write a prescription for a generic drug may save you money in the short term, but not be the best thing for you health-wise in the long run. I want to see what our friend Nick Tate thinks about that. Nick, when I talk to my doctor and he says, well, do you want me to write a generic prescription or a name brand drug, what should I answer?
It's really becoming a more complicated question. Generics have been pushed to a great degree in this country, and they now account for about 90% of all medications that are taken in the U.S. But most consumers really have no idea what's in the medications that they're taking, and there are new questions that are being raised about where some of those medications are being manufactured. The FDA has banned imports from several companies in India, which supplies about 40% of our generics because of manufacturing problems that have put patients at risk. So it's really becoming a more difficult question, and you really need to talk to your doctor about whether a brand name drug, depending on what you're taking, is a better option than a generic and a safer option than a generic.
Is this also a conversation that we could have with our pharmacists? Are we able to ask the local pharmacy owner where he gets his drugs or what manufacturer is making these generic drugs?
You can ask, but the truth is that a lot of the chain drugstores buy in bulk, and they buy from India, they buy from Pakistan, China, Iran. Your pharmacist may not, in fact, know. It's not just that consumers don't know. Many pharmacists, many doctors themselves don't know, and it's very, very difficult to find out. The other thing is that the FDA does allow for different levels of active ingredients, ranging from between 80 to 125 for each pill. So you may be getting more, or you may be getting less in your generic than you would get in a more carefully controlled brand name drug. So a lot of questions there really that are hard to answer at this point.
It's difficult for patients to make an educated decision because insurance companies sometimes won't pay for the brand name drug. They encourage their insured to actually use generic, and yet the generic might not actually be doing the job that the brand name could be doing.
The thing to know about this is a step prescription where insurers will require you to take the first step of trying the generic first before going to the brand name drug. In most cases, the insurers will honor it if your doctor will say, in this case, the generic does not work, the generic is problematic, and we need to go to the brand name drug. Your doctor can be very helpful there in moving directly to a brand name drug, but you need to know that you have to position your doctor to do that.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Lynn.
Joining us now is cardiologist Chauncey Crandall, who is also editor of the Heart Health Report for Newsmax magazine and who's also featured on Newsmax.com. Dr. Crandall, so nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
We're
Enjoy being
particularly
here.
grateful to have you since I understand that you've just come out of surgery.
Well, I've been in surgery all day and I just came from the hospital.
Well, we appreciate your time. Tell me what you think about this report comparing generic drugs to brand name drugs. Which one would you recommend to your patients?
Well, you know, I always try to put my patients on brand name drugs. The generics are starting to give us a problem, and I'm very concerned about that.
Why are you concerned? What kinds of problems have you witnessed?
Well, some years ago, I had many of my heart patients on a special heart drug that became a generic drug, and after going on this drug, many of their hearts started to fail. I couldn't understand really what was happening until I saw this failure repeating in many patients. I put them back on the name brand drug and their heart failure disappeared. So this led me to believe that there is something going on with generic medicines that we need to be concerned about.
Have you witnessed problems with other drugs or just those that are related to the heart?
Well, you know, I use cardiology drugs most often, but there are other drugs that we are beginning to see problems with. Many of these are epileptic drugs to treat epilepsy.
Boy, that would be something that would be horrible for a patient to be taking a generic drug and start to have additional problems.
Absolutely. You know, this is a deep concern of mine, and I want to emphasize to the viewers that if at all possible, you need to go on a brand name drug.
When you say if all possible, is it sometimes, as Nick and I were talking about, the insurance companies that insist that the insured use a generic brand instead of the brand name just because of the cost?
Well, the insurance companies, the VA medical system, and the government want to push you to generic drugs because it lowers the cost of medicine. And this is a big concern of many physicians today, that generics are not equal to brand name drugs.
As a patient myself, I can tell you there's a daily medicine that I take, and I swear when they put me on the generic version of it, I felt different. And my doctor said to me, it's exactly the same thing. It's like buying corn in a can that has the grocery store name on it instead of Del Monte. I definitely felt a difference. Would you tell your patients or anyone who's watching this show to really encourage them to point it out to the doctors if they do feel like it's different?
Lynn, I would encourage all patients to take the name brand drug. There is a difference when we take generics, and it can cost the patient his life. So at all costs, I would urge the viewers to pursue the name brand drug with their primary care and do everything in their effort to get that name brand drug through their insurance company.
Doctor, do you think this is something that is going to find its way to our elected officials? Should we be making a noise in Washington saying that we want to protect ourselves, we want to remain healthy and not be at risk? Is it something that either they or the FDA could monitor?
Absolutely, and I think we need to make our government officials aware of this. They are pushing you to inferior drugs, and we need to get a revolution going to get these inferior drugs off the market. They're already in the VA hospital, and many of these patients are receiving inferior drugs compared to name brand drugs.
I'm certainly glad we had this opportunity to talk to you about this. I hope that people are watching and that they will take the actions that you suggest. Thank you so much. You're going to stick around, right, and answer some email questions from our viewers?
I will, absolutely.
All right, we look forward to that. In the meantime, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about baby boomers suffering from ADHD, not their kids, the baby boomers. Stay with us.